Hey everybody, so today I'm going to be doing a book reading and some commentary. The name of the book is My Name is Bilal, and it is a children's book, but that's okay because I feel that children's books have so many great messages and lessons that aren't just helpful for children, but are also helpful for adults. And maybe sometimes as adults we forget the lessons that we learned as children, but if we remembered them, then the world could be a more peaceful, happier place. So I'm going to read and then I'm going to partake in some commentary. Okay, so here we go. My name is Bilal. It is written by Asma Mobin-Uddin. It is illustrated by Barbara Kiwak. Ayesha's white scarf draped gracefully over her head and shoulders. From the parking lot of their new school, Bilal saw that none of the other students were dressed like his sister. Suddenly he felt afraid. Ayesha clutched her notebook to her chest, showing that she too was afraid. But she was smiling as she walked toward the school building. A gust of wind blew Bilal's cap off his head. "Do you need help?" Ayesha called as he ran after it. "No, I'll get it," called Bilal. "You go ahead." Ayesha nodded and turned toward the school, ignoring the stares and whispers of the other children. Bilal's cap came to rest in some bushes behind a tree in the schoolyard. As he bent to pick it up, he saw two boys following Ayesha. One of the boys grabbed her headscarf and tugged on it. When Ayesha spun around, the boy let go. He and his friend ran off laughing. Other students giggled at Ayesha's lopsided scarf. Bilal stood frozen behind the tree, unable to run to his sister's side. His heart was pounding. Then he heard the school bell ring. Bilal wished his family had never left Chicago. At his old school, there had been lots of Muslim kids. Here, it seemed, there were none. The cold, hard windows of the new school glared at him. He knew he had to go inside. Bilal bowed his head and shuffled up the empty sidewalk. Bilal found the classroom he had visited with his parents the week before. He sat down without looking at anyone. "Class, we have been joined by a new student," the teacher announced. 24 pair of eyes turned to look at Bilal. Bilal looked up. The bully who had pulled Ayesha's scarf was staring at him. Again, Bilal felt afraid. Had the boy seen him walking with Ayesha? Mr. Ali, the teacher, was calling his name. "Bilal." "Bilal?" Bilal spoke at last. "Al is my middle name," he stammered. "My first name is Bill." Mr. Ali looked at him for a long moment. "Class, I want you all to introduce yourselves to Bill," he said. One by one, the students stood up and said their names. "Scott," the bully said when it was his turn. He scowled at Bilal and did not stand up. Mr. Ali began talking about an assignment. Bilal tried to pay attention, but all he could think about was Scott's mean stare and the way Scott had laughed at his sister. Bilal did not even dare to look at him. As soon as class was over, Bilal tried to slip out of the room. Mr. Ali came to him before he could reach the door. As the other students filed past him, Bilal slowly turned and approached his teacher's desk. "Peace be upon you," Mr. Ali said. This was the traditional Muslim greeting, and he spoke in the Arabic language. Bilal had heard these words every day of his life. Today, though, he looked around to be certain the room was empty before he replied. "And peace be upon you," he said. I enjoyed having dinner with your family last night, the teacher told Bilal. The last time I saw your father was 30 years ago, long before either one of us came to the United States. Yes, sir. Bilal knew this. His father loved to tell stories about his school days with Mr. Ali. Now the teacher leaned forward to look at Bilal. Son, why did you say your name was Bill? Because I want to be like everyone else. Nobody else in the class has a name like Bilal. But Bilal is a common name for Muslim boys, Mr. Ali said. Bilal looked down at the floor. I don't want anyone to know I'm Muslim, he said, almost whispering. You won't tell anyone, will you? The teacher stood up. I will keep your secret, Mr. Ali said kindly. But I have a book that I would like you to read. You can do a book report on it. Can you come with your father to evening prayers at the mosque tonight? Bilal nodded. I will give the book to you then. That evening, as his father sat reading the Quran in the mosque, Bilal looked for his teacher. When he found him, Bilal stared in surprise at the title of the book Mr. Ali was holding. Bilal ibn Rabah, friend and helper of the Prophet. I've never heard of anyone famous named Bilal, he said. Bilal ibn Rabah was the first person to give the Muslim call to prayer during the time of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Bilal lived about 1400 years ago, Mr. Ali said. He would climb to the top of the mosque and recite the Adhan. His strong and faithful voice reminded Muslims to pray throughout the day. It must have been easy to be a Muslim back then, Bilal said. Things are different now. Mr. Ali shook his head. Life was hard for the early Muslims too, Bilal. People in Mecca hurt them and tried to make them forget God. But Bilal and the early Muslims knew it was more important to please God than to please the people. What did the people in Mecca do to Bilal? Find out, Mr. Ali said, handing him the book. As Bilal turned to leave, the gentle sound of the call to prayer filled the mosque. God is the greatest. God is the greatest. The Arabic words began. Bilal watched people line up for prayer. He rarely prayed at the mosque. Come to prayer, the voice beckoned. Bilal decided to stand in line beside Mr. Ali. Maybe God would help him feel less afraid. That night, Bilal read from Mr. Ali's book. Bilal ibn Rabah was a slave whose family came from the ancient land of Abyssinia, near where Ethiopia is today. He became a Muslim in the Arabian city of Mecca. The people of Mecca tormented